Okay, so we're back in the shop that's not the shop, and before we get into programming, I always like to say that this is the way that I do these programs. There's 100 different ways. If you find another way easier, go ahead and use the other technique. There's no right or wrong for any of this, but however, this is the way that I do it. So let's begin. We're going to start with a new model. We're going to start with the hammerhead in this case. And the new model will be 8 inches wide, 4 inches tall, working in inches obviously, and origin in the left corner, and we're going to click OK. We'll be greeted with the 3D view, and we want to work with a 2D view, so go up to the top and click on the tab here. We now have our 2D view. The overall dimensions for the hammerhead are 3 inches tall, 6 inches wide. Let's begin with a square, and we're going to locate that square off the bottom corner here so that it's easier to draw the lines and etc. Start with the square tool, click in the bottom corner, left click, drag up and out to give us a starting point. Our width, as we said, is 6 inches over here on the right. Our height is going to be 3 inches. We're going to click create. We don't need to round the corners or any of that stuff, just click create. We're going to click the cursor tool, and we're going to grab this box, left click it, and we're going to drag it right back to the corner where we started from. Okay, now we can click off of the box, and as you can see, we have it. We need to start putting in grid lines to tell us our shapes and to just create the overall shape of the hammerhead, really. First thing we want to do is come up here on the top and left click to grab a grid line, drag down. Once we have it into our work area, we're going to see that it changes to a double arrow when we hover over it. That allows us to do some stuff with that grid line. So let it change to the double arrow and right click, come down here to edit guideline. Now I want that guideline to be at 2.75. I want a 1/4 of an inch from the top of the box to the guideline. So we'll come over here to position. We'll change that to 2.75 and click apply. That puts it 1/4 of an inch from the top. Close this out and hover on the left side now, because we're going to create a taper on this side and a taper on that side. We're going to put the grid lines in, then we're going to do the trimming here to make this shape correct. So let's start with just the grid lines, obviously. Left click, drag in, double arrows, right click, edit guideline. We want that guideline at 0.25, 1/4 of an inch. Click apply. Close this out. Same thing, left click, drag to the right. It doesn't matter where you stop, I mean. Get your double arrow, right click, edit the guideline again, and we want that at 5.75. Click apply. That gives us 1/4 of an inch off of the right edge. Close this out. And we're going to do the pocket here, the pocket cut for where the handle notch is in just a moment, but let's continue with just this so we don't have too many guidelines in here and get you confused. All right, now we need to make the top of the hammerhead arched, so we're going to come over here to the create arc tool, click that. Start here right at the edge of our box, and you'll notice when you're at the edge, it changes to a crosshair with a dot in the center. Left click there and move across. Now it doesn't matter that you go outside as you're squiggling around here. Once you hit the outside edge right there, left click again, and that gives us our arc tool. Now what you want to do is go to the center and slide up until you get that change right there. That tells you that you're at the top of the box in the center. Left click. There's the top arc of our hammerhead. Now what we want to do is go to the draw polyline, and we are going to start right here on the corner of that round over. We're going to left click. We're going to go down here to the bottom, and again the cursor will change when you line up the grid line with the bottom of the box. We're going to left click again. Now push escape because we don't want to drag another line. Push polyline once more. Come back over here to this side where the arc stops. We get the little window to tell us we're there. Left click. Draw down to the bottom until we get the dot. Left click again. Escape once more. And we now have the general shape of our hammerhead. Of course, we got all these guys up here that we don't want. So click over here on these arrows for more tool options. You may have this tool up without doing that. And you're looking for, I always get a laugh out of this. It looks like a guy laying underneath a barbell, but it's actually a pair of scissors. Click on those scissors. You're going to hover over this corner until they open and left click. Hover over this side, left click. Come down here on the bottom. Click again, and on this side, click once more. Come back up to your cursor tool, and we're going to go to Vector, Join. Oops, I skipped something. Click off the project, and then highlight the entire project. Then go to Vector, then go to Join, Join with coincident nodes. You're going to have a tolerance of 0.01, and you're going to click Join. Doesn't look like it did anything, but trust me, it did. Close this out, click off the project, click once more, and you can see now that you have definitely got the shape of the hammerhead. All right, so to make this easier, let's go to View. We can click off the hammerhead if you'd like. Go to View, go down and delete all your guidelines. Click on the hammerhead, push F9, that'll pop it into the middle. I see we have a stray line in here. I don't know why we have that in there, but we'll delete him. Let's go to the left. Left click and drag a line in until we go right to center, which we know the stock size was 8. Double arrows, edit guideline. We need that to be 4 to be in the center. Click apply. That moves the grid line to the dead center. Now, we're going to do some relative offsets. By relative, I mean relative to the first grid line that we did. So we're going to come down here to Insert Grid Lines. They're guidelines, not grid lines. Click Relative Offset. And we need to put a number in here, and then click Insert to obviously put the guidelines in. The notch is 1 7/8 inches wide. We have to divide that by 2 because we're going to do 1/2 on each side of this line, which is 15/16 or 0.9375. So that's what we want to put in here, 0.9375. It is a relative, as I said. Click Insert, and as you can see, it pops another guideline in. Now I need another guideline on this side, so we'll put a negative symbol here. Click Insert once more, and it gives us those two. Let's move this guy out of the way so we can see a little bit. Now, that dimension from this guideline to that guideline is the top of the notch. We need to make an angle that's heading inward towards the bottom. We're not going to go to the center, obviously. We only want to go in a small amount. The bottom dimension is 1 5/8 wide, or divided by 2, 13/16. And again, that becomes 0.8125. We still have the Edit Guidelines menu over. We can now change this figure to 0.8125. We have the negative up right there. Click Insert. As you can see, it puts another line in. Let's remove the negative symbol, and it's going to put a line in over here when we click Insert. That now gives us all we need for the angle of this notch. Let's close out the Edit Guideline menu. Let's go to Draw Polyline. We're going to start right here at the widest point on the top. Left click, drag down to the narrow point on the bottom. Left click, drag across to the other narrow point. Left click, back up to the widest point. Left click, and back to our starting point. When we get the window, we're there. The window in the crosshair, I mean. Left click, that is our notch. Now we have to, that gives us the angle, but we have to extend this box above and below the hammerhead. Otherwise, let's go to the cursor tool and click off so you can see a little better. Otherwise, when you do a pocket or an area clearance here, it's going to create an arch right there, and it's going to mess with your handle when you want to put it in. You want a flat, straight cut on each corner. The way we do this is very simple. Let's delete these guidelines so that we can see a little easier. Delete all guides. Let's put one more. at roughly, let's see, edit the guideline. Let's go 0.75, 3.75, and apply. Let's get rid of that. We can drag another one down here. You know what? We don't even need those guidelines. We can eyeball this. Let's get rid of the guidelines. Click on the box. Go to scaling or transform. You see all these little dots we have around here. Hover over the center dot, left click, and drag it up roughly that far. This isn't that precise. All we're trying to do is get the 1/4 inch end mill that we're going to use to cut this notch out to pass straight through the hammerhead and then turn to make the corner. And when it turns, we don't want an arch or a radius here on each side. We should be good with that figure right there. And then it's just a simple matter of creating an area clearance for the center and a profile tool for the outside. I can do that quickly here for you because you do need to know the depth of this. We click on that. So this will be a area clearance. So you're going to go down here and click on area clearance. Start depth is 0. Your finish depth will be 0.5, 1/2 of an inch. Your handle is going to be 1 inch thick. So you'll have 2 halves to your hammerhead. When you put them together, you'll have a 1 inch wide opening, 1 inch thick opening. So we are at 0.5, which is 1/2. We're going to go to a 1/4 inch end mill. Select that. We're going to roll down. We're going to go to an offset strategy. Let's slow the feed rate down a little bit. 75 is good. Machine safety is 0.1. That's correct. Material thickness is 1 inch. That's correct. And we'll call that pocket. And calculate now. So there's the pocket for the handle. We can close this out. Now we need to cut the actual head loose, so we'll click on the outside line. This will be a profile tool cut or tool path. We're going to start at 0. Finish depth will be 1 inch. Going back to the 1/4 inch end mill again. Scrolling down, we're not going to use any bridges or tabs because we're going to use the painter's tape and CA glue trick. Everything here is correct. This we will call cut out or cut loose, whichever you prefer. Now you don't have to name these things. You can just calculate. Naming them only becomes more important when you have 5 or 6 different tool operations and you're trying to keep them straight. So calculate now. Close this out. And let's simulate the tool paths. And there you have it. There's the hammer head or the mallet head. Let's go to simulation. And we will auto delete the waste material just to make it easier to see. All right, there's your mallet head. Let's move on to the handle. We need to select a profiling tool. That'll be a 1/4 inch end mill. This entire project will be done with a 1/4 inch. That way you don't have to change tools back and forth. We're not going to add any bridges. We're going to use the painter's tape and CA glue trick to hold this thing down. And we'll go down through here. You can name it cut off if you like. You don't actually have to name it. Naming it becomes more important when you have 5 and 6 tool paths over here and you're trying to keep things straight. Let's calculate now. And let's close this out. Let's go to tool paths and right click. Simulate all tool paths. Simulate. And there you have it. Now if you click on simulation over here and drop down, you can see that the material I have is medium oak. Simulation default, if we click apply, looks like this. Let's go back to medium oak. I just think it makes it easier to see. There, click apply. And if we like, we can come over here to these guys, click those, and we'll delete the waste material so you can get a better look at this. Now if I push down on the center mouse wheel and I rotate, you can see that you have half of a hammerhead there. And by that, I mean you'll create two of these, glue them together, aligning that notch perfectly, and then you'll slide your hammer handle down through them, and you will have a fancy schmancy hammerhead. Now, in the case of ours out in the shop, I glued a piece of maple on to this side of each one of them, and then I can glue it together, and you have a multiple layer, fancy schmancy looking hammer. Let's move on to the handle, because every hammer needs a handle, or every mallet. I should say mallet with these things. Okay, so we're back to the new model screen here in Maker, in Carveco, and we need to switch this guy up a little bit. So now the width is going to be 16 inches, and the height will be 3 inches in this case, not 43, 3. Working in inches, origin in the bottom left again, click OK. Switch to the 2D view. Alright, just like the mallet head, we're going to use a lot of guidelines to make this happen. And in some points here, it'll get a little confusing looking at all the guidelines. I'm going to try to delete them as we go as best I can to save the confusion. But to begin with, we need to come up in the top and grab a guideline and pull it down to the center. Double arrows, right click. We're going to edit the guideline. We need it dead center at 1.5. Click apply. That moves it to the center, obviously. So now we need to do some relative offsets. The top of the handle is going to be roughly 2 inches wide. So we need to divide that by 2. Obviously, that's 1. So if we put a 1 in here and we do an insert, that gives us the first guideline. We need to put in a negative figure to give us the guideline down here. And we continue to do that, bouncing back and forth across the center line to get the guidelines in the spot where we need them. So that's the widest portion of the handle on the top. Now we're going to put the 2 guidelines in for the narrowest portion at the bottom of the taper. So the narrowest portion of the taper towards the base of the handle is 1.25 inches wide. We need to put in some more guidelines to indicate where that taper ends, or the angle that it creates. Let's slide this out of the way, and we're going to change this. 1/2 inch is, in decimals, 0.625. Doing a relative offset, we're going to insert one, then we're going to go negative 0.625 to insert the other. So that is the narrowest portion, those 2 guidelines. This is the widest portion. Let's close this out. We know the bottom of the taper is 7 3/8 inches over from the top, so edit this guideline. 7 3/8 is 7.375. We're going to apply. That'll move the guideline where we need it. Closing this out. And now we can go to the poly line. Click the poly line. Start at the narrowest portion here. Left click to the widest portion there. Left click. And each time you land on the crosshair, you see that your target changes from an up and down dumbbell looking device to a crosshair. Left click, back to the narrowest portion, to a regular crosshair, and left click there. Push escape. That creates our taper. Now, if we, on the center of the handle where your hand is here on the hammer handle, that's a lot to say at once, there is a arch here that gets narrow, and that narrow arch goes down to 3/4 inch at its widest spot. Or I'm sorry, 7/8 inch at its widest spot. So we need to put in some more grid lines. Hopefully it doesn't confuse you here. Right click, edit the guideline again. Let's slide this over so we can see what we're doing. We need a relative offset. 1/2 of 7/8 is 0.875. I'm sorry, that's not correct. 7/8 is 0.875. 1/2 of that is 0.4375. So we're going to do a relative offset. 0.4375. We're going to insert that guideline. We need another negative to put the other one in. Insert that guideline. And as I said, it's going to start to get a little confusing with all these in here, so close this. Let's go over to this side, hover on the very bottom one, and once you have it, right-click, and let's delete that one. Go to the top one. Once you have the double arrow, right-click, and let's delete that one. Now, this arch starts at the base of the taper and stops 1/2 of an inch from the end of the handle. So we need another guideline at 14 inches. So we get the double arrow, edit guideline. We need 14 on the money. Click apply. Now, the end of the handle, the overall dimension of the handle is 14.5 inches. So if we do a relative offset of 0.5, that will show us the very end of the handle. Let's insert that. Close the guideline menu out. So the arch then starts from this point and ends at this point over here. The way we create it is to go to the arch tool. We left click when we get the crosshair with a window, sliding across, and it doesn't matter if you're not following the guideline. Once you get to the right spot, straight across, left click, and as you can see, we now can play with the arch in this tool. Slide it down to this mark right here, this guideline, left click, come over here to the other one, get your window, left click, straight over, left click again, and we're going to bring this one, we're going to bend that into the second line. Left click, there is the taper for your handle. Go to the cursor tool, let's click off so you can see it a little bit. Starting to look like something here. All right, now go back to the polyline. Start at the base of the handle. Left click out to the crosshair. Left click across the bottom of the handle. Left click. We get our window. Left click again. Push the escape tool. Go to the cursor. We can click off, and now you can see that we have a handle. Now, one more thing that I want to do here is put that hole in the handle right in here in the center. So the easiest thing to do is go to View, delete all the guidelines so it doesn't get confusing, grab another one and put it in there at 14.25. Double arrows, right click, edit guideline, 14.25, and we want to apply. We don't want to insert, we want to apply. Close that out. Grab one here, put this one at 1.5 inches. You can hear Atlas's toenails clicking if you're paying attention. He's walking around behind me. We're going to edit guideline. 1.5 on the money, apply. Right there is where we want to put that hole. Go to the circle tool, hover in the center and drag out. Let's make that a diameter of 0.255. You need it just a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch end mill, so that way the end mill will do what it's supposed to. Click create, or otherwise the circle is going to go away. Close out that menu. We can go back to view and delete all the guidelines. Now what you need to do is highlight everything, go to vector, go to join with coincident nodes, set your tolerance at 0.01, and click join. Close this out. What that has done has now taken all of those separate items that we've created and made them into one piece. And we'll prove it by clicking. And as you can see, it is now the handle. So we'll click on everything once more to get everything active. Push F9 to put it in the center of your stock. That way you can mill this thing out without running off of the stock. Click off of it, and let's do some toolpaths. So to cut this out, it's a profile toolpath. That's pretty straightforward. The hole is an area clearance. Click on toolpaths, area clearance. Start depth is 0. The handle depth is 1 inch. Or you could do a 1/2 inch handle, 1/2 inch thickness, and glue them together like I did when I made this hammer handle. That is your choice. If you're going to do 2 pieces, your stock would be a 1/2 inch thick. If you're going to do a 1-piece handle, you'll need a 1-inch thick piece of stock. So your start depth is 0. Your finish depth will be, let's put in 1. I'm assuming that you're going to do 1 here, 1 handle, not a lamination. We're going to add the tool. We're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to select. We're going to change it to offset tool. Safe Z is 0.1, that's correct. Material thickness we need to set up. As I said, you're going to use 1 inch if you want a single piece handle. If you want a double piece or 2-piece handle, you just have to adjust the stock accordingly and cut out the number needed to get a total of 1 inch thickness for the opening in the hammer or the mallet head. Click OK. We're going to call this the hole, obviously. Calculate now. Close that out. Click on the handle itself. Go to Profile Toolpath. Start depth is 0. Finish depth then is 1. Back to the 1/4 inch end mill. Select that. No bridges, no tabs. We're going to use the CA glue and blue painter's tape trick again. Safe Z is correct. Material thickness is correct. We'll call this handle. Let's calculate that now. Close this out. Right click on toolpaths and let's simulate all toolpaths and see what we get. It sure looks like a handle. Click on simulation. Let's change the material to my favorite, medium oak, so I can see it well. Click apply. Let's delete the waste material. Push down on the mouse wheel and you have a handle. All right, let's go out to the shop that is the shop and let's make some chips fly. Okay, so a couple of things. We are going to use the blue tape and CA glue trick. I've got my stock all taped up and ready to go. We're still working on this guy here, these these chest pieces. So I don't want to destroy my fixture here, so I've measured off the fence and drew a line to get me straight. And we only need to be relatively straight to begin with because we're going to cut a chunk out of here. It's not like we got to be exact on this square. I went ahead and went in and reprogrammed the programming to add this additional stock thickness to the entire stock. So my cut through tool path is now equivalent to these two to put together, so it'll cut through. So let's go ahead and throw some CA glue on here. Spray the table. Line up the back corner straight. Hold it for 10 seconds and bing bang boom, it ain't going nowhere. We're going to bring this over. I've already changed to the 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to use the touch plate off the corner. We're going to let it rock and roll. We'll have half of the hammerhead on this one. And then we'll put this one in and do the same thing. Ditto, and bing bang boom, we'll have a hammerhead. As you can see, I'm right close. We'll cut that off with a bandsaw, shine it up, make another one of these, put it together, and we'll have the head done.